This is the official beginning of our webinar. My name is Glenn Lubert. I'm the CEO here of Practice Doc. And we have an exciting new webinar today, Handling Patient Objections. It's going to be a rare live workshop from our friends at YellowTelescope, which is the industry's top sales training source. Jon Hoffenberg, who will be presenting, along with previously was going to be Ed Syring, who's now going to be with Dean DeVries, and at YellowTelescope, they've done over $30 million in cosmetic surgery and treatments. That's an average of $3.5 million a year. And most impressive, an 85% in-office patient booking ratio. And so now today we are going to get some of those secrets in a live role-playing situation. So we asked a lot of you for your questions at the beginning of your registration, and I know that Jon and Dean are going to be digging into those. And afterwards, we will have the opportunity for some questions. If you have some questions along the way, please feel free to enter them in the question box, and then I'll be able to communicate them with Jon and Dean. And also note that at the end, we're going to have some special offers, so please make sure you stay till the very end. With that, I'm going to turn it all over to Jon and Dean.
Well, great. Thank you, Glenn, and appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody, and thanks to Practice Doc for sort of hosting us here. I hope everybody is doing great and excited to learn some tips on overcoming patient objections here today. Our partner here at YellowTelescope is Ed Syring. Due to a very ill family member, he's not with us today, but we may have found someone as good and in some ways even better in Dean DeVries, who's joining me today. Dean, are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Dean is actually one of our current YellowTelescopers, and Dean has been in his role in a sales capacity. He happens to work with a plastic surgeon, and he's been working with the group for over 2 years. He averages, or he's on pace this year for over $3 million in surgery and services sales personally. He maintains over an 80% in-office booking ratio for surgery, and last week, for example, sold over $100,000 personally. So I'm very happy and honored to have Dean join us today, and so we're going to dive right in. We are going to address a number of different patient objections on this webinar and actually do live role-playing. It's the first live workshop that we've done where we're actually going to be talking about objections and solving them live. There have been about 75 questions that have been submitted in advance. We've tried to narrow those down to the most common questions. If we have time at the end, we'll try to get to a couple of your other questions that are submitted, but with likely triple-digit people listening in, we may not get to every question, but we'll do our best to really make this a productive call. With that said, I want to talk a little bit about the background. We were formed in 2008, so we've been around about 6 years, and basically all we do is hire, train, and oversee the industry's most successful practice managers and salespeople. The average YellowTelescoper does sell over $2 million per year personally for their doctors. We work with everything from ophthalmologists to dentists, orthodontists, periodontists, to facial plastic and plastic surgeons and ENTs and dermatologists, and people who generally have some sort of cash component to their practice where it's not 100% insurance, although we do have a significant way of helping those who take a significant portion of insurance. We do have over a 70% in-office booking ratio and over a 90% show ratio, and several of our top people sell even more than just a couple million a year. We've had practices grow by over $250,000, and we really focus on testing things before implementing them. We tend to shoot bullets and try different things and then shoot a cannon once we figure out something really, really powerful that really works. So we never ask that you trust me because I went to a good school or because I said so or because I have experience, but rather because everything that we're teaching, everything that Dean does and that I recommend has been tested in multiple offices throughout the country, from Orange County to New York, from Miami to Houston, from Canada, Australia. So let's talk a little bit about objections. I have a few short slides to run through with you, and then we're going to dive in on the live role playing. But we really believe here at YellowTelescope on focusing on the psychology behind what we do. We feel that if you understand why you're doing what you're doing, then you can very much do those things while still making it your own and keeping your own style, your own personality, your own particular type of medicine that your practices while still getting great results. And what we know is when we think about patient objections, which are fundamentally the hurdles that we must overcome in order to increase sales, there's really formally in almost any sales process only two real objections. And one is money, things related to cost. And then second are things that are related to different fears the patient has: fear of surgery, fear of needles, fear of anesthesia, fear of going to the doctor at all. And there's dozens, if not hundreds, of other quote-unquote objections, but we call them clouds. We always say the sun is the real root of the problem. It's the real objection. And then depending on the patient, they oftentimes give you cloud objections that sort of obfuscate or cover up the real source of the fear. So what we're going to talk about first is the cloud. So you've all heard these objections. I definitely want to move forward, but I want to talk to my husband, or I want to talk with my wife. I want to think about it. And what does that really mean, right? Well, we all want to think about everything, but what do we do when they say I want to think about it? My time frame has changed. I know I said I need May or June, but now I need, July or August. I have another appointment that I need to check with. I need to confirm with that other doctor that I don't like him better than you, and then I'll go ahead and make a decision. I want to do a bit more research before I commit. I need to get financing. I like to save because I don't believe in payment plans. My credit isn't very good. Can I get a discount? I'd like to do it, but I need a lower price and a lower quote, and every other one we could come up with. So these are probably 8 or 10 of your most popular ones, but they all sort of fit into those two categories of different fears related to the surgery or different cost issues or pricing issues, fear of money. So we're going to come back to those. The first thing we want to teach you on this particular call in a little bit more depth, and for those of you guys who've already downloaded our podcast, Ed and I had a little more fun with the objection cycle. Important thing that we're going to teach on this call: the customer, the patient in this case, listen to us and not have their guard up, because oftentimes we have the right answer or the right solution, but the customer or patient has mentally checked out of the situation. And one of the most important things is that the patient is listening when you've got a great new solution. I'm sure we've all been there, where we've been in an argument, we've been in a fight, and one side is saying something that's very logical, and yet the other person isn't really hearing it. They hear the words coming into their brain, but it's not processing. So what we teach is what we call the objection cycle, which is 4 basic steps. The first thing we do as soon as we get an objection from a customer or patient is to agree with them. That doesn't mean we say, you're right, it's too much money, go away, but it means we relate to them. We repeat back to them what they've already said so that we can show some true understanding of what their concerns are. So we might say, if someone said, well, I want to think about it, we might say, well, absolutely, I can understand that. It makes sense that you'd want to think things through, and before you really committed to something, that you would you want to do your research and be sure. So we basically just repeat back to them what they said in an understanding way. When we do this first, before just diving in with a new answer or a way to handle the objection, the guard comes down. They realize that you're treating them as a real person. Oftentimes, the patient is worried that if they give you an objection, you're just going to spit back to them a solution, or you're going to be upset with them or disagree with them. But when you first agree and make them feel heard, their overall feeling is more positive. They're willing to listen a little better. And this is something that my wife taught me long ago, is the first thing that you should do is just agree with me. So I learned that about 6-7 years ago. After that, we make a transitional statement. Now that they're on our side, now that we're on theirs, now that we're working together to solve the situation, we can transition into solutions. So if you ever feel like you're being pushy or pressury or rude or aggressive, there's a significant chance that you've not made an effort to regurgitate or agree with them first and kind of make them feel heard. Then we go, well, but However, one thought on that, an idea might be, if you don't mind me giving you some other thoughts, and that's your transitional statement, the second bullet point you see on your screen that leads you into offering a solution. Now, the solutions we're going to get to in a little bit, whether it's finance plans, whether it's making the deposit refundable, maybe it's answering some fears or concerns, maybe it's speaking with the anesthesiologist. There's a number of different things we could offer as solutions, but if they're not listening to us and they've already mentally checked out, we're out of luck. And then once we've offered a great new solution, whatever that solution is, the fourth bullet point is to ask for the order. AFTO, ask for the order. AFTO, ask for the order. And as we should all know in sales, if you're not asking someone for the sale, then you're not going to get a response. Very rarely does someone go on a date with you that you never ask out. You've got to at least do the asking first to get the answer that you want. And in an interesting thought, because I had a question from a doctor that did mostly insurance work, and in fact, it was a cardiologist, and he had said, well, the reality is in our business, we're not selling anything because we don't really need to ask for the order because there's no cost. And I said, well, absolutely, patient care comes first in all industries, in particular when we're dealing with something as serious as heart issues or, God forbid, a heart attack or different surgeries. Absolutely, we're not quote-unquote selling anything, but they do have a choice of provider. And they, if they're smart, might be looking at 2 or 3 different physicians to perform that treatment or surgery. So they're still making a choice. There's still a sale being made, even if there's no official price tag attached to it. So this really overall psychologically works in everything we do, whether we're selling Gucci bags or Mercedes-Benz cars or things at the flea market or surgery or insurance-covered billables. So this is the basic psychology of what we're going to be doing. A couple of other quick thoughts on the phone call itself. As every objection fundamentally deep down beneath the clouds is either fear or money, all objections can and should be handled by phone, which is very counterintuitive to many practices. And this is something that goes into a much longer discussion, possibly between us and your doctor one day in the future if you contact us. We really do believe in being very thorough and very clear over the phone about a lot of things. Some practices, like for example, plastic surgeons tend to have a deposit policy where you have to place some money down. Orthodontists may have a specific window in which they're offering treatments for the summer because their schedule gets very full very far in advance. We build urgency over the phone. We get time frame over the phone. And we're not afraid to have what I call fierce conversations. It's a great book, by the way, if you're looking for a good read, which isn't about being pushy, pressury, rude, or too forward, but it's about getting to the heart of the matter and having a true and honest conversation with each customer. You'll notice that we like to attack irrational thought with logic. We never attack patients or people, but we are pit bulls when it comes to being reasonable, rational, and logical, and we can do this on the phone, and the objection cycle is what makes you comfortable doing it. I think we've all been in the situation, whether you're a doctor, an office manager, a treatment coordinator, patient advisor, nurse, etc. on this particular webinar, we've all been in the situation where we'd like to say something to the patient, but we know we probably shouldn't say it quite that way. And the chances are that what you actually want to say to them is exactly what they need to hear. It's all a matter of how we present that information. And the key is to present it in a positive, professional, and logical manner, which the objection cycle allows you to do. My very last point before we dive in is for those people listening in who work in the type of medical practice that requires deposits for certain things, whether it's significantly high number copays, $500,000, $2,000 copays, whether it's a 20 or 30% deposit for a surgery, or whether it's just a reservation of date without a formal deposit, we are strong believers in a refundable deposit. What we're going to talk about is the only objection that we cannot overcome is the word no. And in fact, no really isn't an objection. No is a statement of decision. So if a patient ever says to us, nope, well, do you want to proceed? Nope. Do you ever want to proceed? Nope. Any reason? Nope, 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 nope. There's very little we can do. But very rarely, if ever, does a patient say that. Patients always say no because. No because I want to check with my wife. No because I don't have the money. No because I'm not sure until I see this other doctor. And it's that word that comes after because that's the objection. The only other challenging objection that is impossible to overcome is if you offer a non-refundable deposit. And let me explain why. If a patient says to you, I am 99% sure that I want to go with Dr. Smith. He seems fantastic. I definitely think he's the one for me, and I'm really, really, really leaning towards June 6th. Well, that's great. And then we say, well, it's $1,000 non-refundable. The objection that they often will give is, well, I'm 99% sure, John, but I'm not 100% sure. So would you mind if I gave you a call back tomorrow or the next day once I'm 100%? And as we all know, as soon as the individual leaves the office, the statistical likelihood of their selecting your office plummets. It's not zero. We do get callbacks. Sometimes we get a lot of them, but it does decrease exponentially the moment they leave the office and gets worse and worse every 24 hours that pass. And that's one thing you really can't argue with. You'd say, well, you know what, it is non-refundable and you are going to lose it. So we really encourage practices that have the type of industry where a deposit is required to make that a refundable deposit. It could be a significant amount of money, so there's plenty of skin in the game. We have several of our practices that use it between a 10 and a 30% deposit. Refundable for between 2 and 4 weeks prior. So if the patient checks in on short notice, they would lose their deposit, but as long as they give you, say, 3 weeks, that gives you time to replace the patient, make sure the patient can get their money back. And just so you know, they don't do it that often. The statistical likelihood of them canceling is the same as when you have a non-refundable deposit, which is in the 3 to 8% range or a 5% range in general, because we tested it and that's the facts. So that's the one we can't overcome. So the way we overcome that objection is simply changing policy to make it refundable. So let's go through some examples and some assumptions. So here we go. Dean, are you ready to rock and roll, sir?
I'm ready to rock and roll.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the first objection and how we might handle it using my objection cycle, and then we're going to trade back and forth and do a few examples before we open it up for additional questions. So, all right, Dean, you're going to be Dean DeVries, the patient, and you're going to say you have to talk to your husband.
Okay, sounds good.
Great, Mrs. Smith. You'll be Mrs. Smith. So, Mrs. Smith, this is fantastic. So here's your quote and information. Would you like to go ahead and schedule your procedure date?
Okay, well, I do need to talk to my husband first before I make any decisions.
Okay, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Mrs. DeVries, that sounds great, and to be honest, I totally agree with you. You know, this is a big decision. It's not the biggest in the whole wide world, but it's a big decision, and it's a family decision, and we definitely would want to make sure that your husband is on board with things, and that's absolutely important, so I'm totally with you. That totally makes sense. Now, one thought on that, by the way, is if I recall correctly, you had mentioned that you were looking over the phone. You had said you really need to get this done during the month of June. Is that correct?
Yeah, I really do.
Okay, great. So I know you said you've got the grandkids coming in July, and then the kids are back to school and so on. So that sounds great. The only thought I'd mention to you is that, as a reminder, our deposit is fully refundable. So by selecting a date, you're not committing life or death to the procedure or anything, or even to the doctor. What you're doing is really reserving a time, reserving a date, because the doctor's schedule books up so far in advance. We want to make sure you can even get a date. So let me ask you this. How long would you need to check with your husband? Is that something you could do today, tomorrow, in a week? When would you have time to chat with him?
Oh, I'll definitely be able to talk to him probably by tomorrow.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, what's great about our process, and the reason that I had mentioned this over the phone to you, Mrs. Smith, is that because we're very busy, I'm not going to say for sure that date will be gone tomorrow, but I could say that there is a likelihood that it might be, and we do have very few dates left for June. So what we had mentioned over the phone was at least bring your calendar with you, at least reserving the date so you could get one. And not only will you have a night to talk with your husband, but because you're not looking until June 21st, you're going to have all the way until June 1st. Like, you're going to have almost 2 weeks to kind of discuss it with them. And if for any reason you're not 100%, you can change dates with no penalty. And you can also just simply send me a one-line email. We can even refund your deposit if absolutely necessary. And that way, life or death, you're not committed to anything at all, but you'll still be able to get the date you want. Would it be realistic to be able to at least reserve that date for you today? And then once you check with your husband, you'll let me know if for any reason you don't wish to proceed?
Okay, yeah, I could do that.
All right, great. So that's the way I would go about handling that type of objection. And what we really teach in this business is something that we call the talking penguin, which is one of my goofy analogies, which I think all of you out there in webinar land have been in a situation where you're having the perfect dream. You're on a beautiful beach, the weather is somehow sunny but also 75 with a light breeze. You've got maybe a non-alcoholic or alcoholic daiquiri to your right, depending on your drinking preference. You've got a very good-looking human being feeding you grapes. The water's perfect, and you own a mansion, and you're a billionaire. And you say to yourself, well, this is of course normal. This is exactly the way my life should be. And then along the beach comes what we call a talking penguin. Literally, you see a penguin. It waves to you. It says good morning. and you way back to it, and you say good morning, and on walks the penguin. And during your dream, this seems completely reasonable that there could be a live talking penguin in the Caribbean. And then at some point, a few minutes later, your brain sort of wakes up, and it says, wait a second, that's illogical. There's no such thing as a talking penguin. Penguins don't live in the South, and they certainly don't wave at me. And actually, I'm pretty sure I work in a medical practice. I'm not a billionaire. I don't understand what happens. And then your brain wakes you up. And what part of the brain wakes you up in that case is the part of the brain that detects logic. Literally, even though you're sleeping, your brain says, this isn't possible. And it kind of makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It kind of triggers something in the brain. And then, of course, you wake up and you're all sad that you can't go back to that same wonderful dream. Well, a lot of the objections, and it's a goofy analogy, but it's memorable, which is why we use it. A lot of the objections we get from patients are talking penguins, meaning they seem logical and reasonable in the moment, but when you actually think about the logic, it makes no sense at all. And that is what we do, is we attack talking penguins. We go after those illogical things. So let me give you guys a simple example of a classic talking penguin. A classic talking penguin is, well, John, I can't possibly decide if I'd like to move forward in June. I haven't even met the doctor yet. That to me sounds logical. Like, okay, you haven't even met us. How on earth would you know when you want to proceed? But if you actually look at the logic behind that objection, the reason it's a definite cloud, it's not the source of the objection, is it makes no actual logical sense. The doctor you select has nothing to do with the time frame in which you select him or her. The reality is you have to have a time frame no matter which doctor you select. If you're going to have cosmetic dentistry, if you're going to have veneers, if you're going to have a rhinoplasty, if you're going to have a breast augmentation, you need to know when you're going to do it, and then you might choose between 2 or 3 doctors. So it sounds good to them, it sounds good to us, but it's illogical, and this objection cycle allows us to sort of comfortably acknowledge their talking penguin in a way that makes them feel heard, but then also break down that lack of logic and show them why it doesn't make sense. So, yeah, you can talk to your husband. Heck, you can talk to your husband for the next 3 weeks, but you don't need to talk to your husband in order to maybe look at a date, especially because we talked about it over the phone, which is why all this should have been covered in advance. So, okay, Dean, are you ready to think about it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. People love think about it because it's just one of those things you can say. What do you want to do tonight? I don't know. I'm going to think about it. It's another way of just sort of putting things off. And we know deep down think about it means nothing. It doesn't make any sense at all because it's not like they're going to go and sit in the corner of their home, thinking about it for like 6 or 10 or 12 hours, let alone 5 minutes. But it's something that they say, and it's a standard cloud objection. So let's see how Dean uses the objection cycle to overcome it. So I'll be Bob Smith, who's looking for veneers on his teeth. So, right. Okay, great. Well, Dean, I really appreciate everything. You guys have been outstanding, by the way. Really, really thorough. And you're obviously very knowledgeable. And
great, we appreciate that.
And fantastically tall and amazing. And you're basically the greatest salesperson we've ever met in the world. But you know what? What I'm going to do is I just want to kind of go ahead and think about it a little bit.
Okay. Well, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that it's something that you definitely need to think about. Obviously, this is something that affects the way that you look forever, Bob. So I think you really do need to think about it and be sure this is something that's for you. Just out of curiosity, how much time do you think it'll take you to think about it?
Well, not long. Don't get me wrong. I'm not planning on putting this off for months. But I think if I had maybe a week just to kind of, I don't know, think it through or whatever, that'd probably be enough for me to make a decision.
A week. Okay, great. Well, no particular rush on our part. In fact, you have all the way up until 2 weeks beforehand that if you decide not to move forward, you can call and cancel and get your deposit back. So there's absolutely no risk by just selecting a date today. So understanding that all we're doing today is reserving a date, assuming that you do decide to move forward, since the doctor does book up in advance. So do you see why it makes sense to reserve the doctor's time first and then think about it afterwards?
Yeah, so you're saying that I wouldn't, that I might miss out on the date or something, or?
Exactly. Just because the doctor does book up in advance, and the next couple of dates that we have, obviously we're trying to fill those as soon as possible. And I'm not guaranteeing that they're going to be gone, but there's certainly a chance that that if you do call back after you think about it, that they will be. So obviously there's no risk in placing your deposit today, reserving one of the dates. And heck, if you need to, you can call me in a week after you decide. And worst case scenario, if you decide to cancel, we could just go ahead and refund your money back.
Great. All right, excellent. So you'll notice both of those objections are fundamentally about the same. Talking to my husband is just, I always joke around, something that was actually taught to me by one of our other yellow telescopers up in New York, a guy named Joe Bayamonte, if any of you know him, is he would say, if a patient said, I need to talk to my wife or husband, he'd say, well, great. Tell me a little about what you think they might be concerned about. And sure enough, it's not really what the husband or wife is concerned about, it's what the person in front of you is, but it's an easy way for them to tell you their true concerns without us saying, oh, come on, it's you, it's not really your spouse. And so I think that was a good tip, by the way. So let's go on to the next one. My time frame has changed. So, okay, Dean, let's talk a little bit about that. So you'll give me the old time frame has changed. Cool?
Okay. All right. Well, John, you've been a really big help, and I mean everything looks great. However, I really don't have to do it in June. I think I'm going to wait till a little bit later on in the year, and then decide to do it then.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and actually, that to be honest, a little weight off of my shoulders because I know when you had called, you were thinking about definitely doing June, which is just around the corner. I mean, we're down to basically like a date or two for that month. So that's actually a little easier for me, and I don't really think of myself as anything more than your patient concierge. I'm here to help you, make your life easier. So that actually makes my job a little easier. So I'm totally with you. Now, out of curiosity, when you say a little later this year, are you thinking more like July, August, more like September, October, more like late year, or more like next year? Just to have kind of some idea, realistically, based on our price range and your schedule with work and the kids and so on. What were you thinking at this point? Now that June is not the issue.
Well, I definitely want to get it done this year, but it definitely cannot, now that I'm looking at my schedule, it can't be before October. So probably after October, between October and December.
Okay, great. So it sounds like we're looking in a perfect world, kind of like late October through sometime at the end of December. Is that correct?
Correct.
Great, absolutely. Well, that sounds perfect. Now, do you necessarily want to have holiday dates like around Thanksgiving so you can take advantage of that healing time, or around Christmas time and New Year's?
Yeah, just because I have vacation time already saved up, so I think I want to do. I think I definitely want to go during the holidays, so Thanksgiving or maybe even like towards the end of in December, the holidays would work perfectly.
Okay.
For me,
and if you had to choose, and I'm not going to hold you to it, but if you had to choose, are you more likely to pick Thanksgiving or Christmas, New Year's time?
Probably Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Okay. Well, so that all makes sense, and that sounds great. Now, what I will tell you is this. I'm not going to tell you that all of Thanksgiving week is full because it quite simply isn't. What I will say is this, which won't surprise you. Of course, we're closed for the holiday itself. Friday, we're also closed because the doctor gives the staff the day off between Thursdays. They got the long weekend. So really, just even today, even if no one is scheduled, the maximum we'd have to choose from is 3 days that week. And so I'm assuming that if you're going to do that week, you'd want to max out your healing time?
Yeah, I really would.
Okay, you would. Great. Well, my suggestion, it's really up to you. We could try to do the Wednesday, but I'm not even sure he'll be open. But I really think we're down to Monday or Tuesday of that week. So don't get me wrong. It could be a day or it could be 2 months before someone scoops up that Monday or Tuesday slot. So there's no real guarantee that it will or won't be available. But what I would say to you is understand that your time frame has changed, assuming that you still feel the same about everything else, which is you kind of know your calendar, you like the doctor, you're aware the deposit is 100% refundable, you take no risk whatsoever in selecting the date. What a lot of our patients will do is at least reserve the date and place their deposit to get on the calendar because it's one of the busiest weeks of the year. And that way you don't take any risk that you miss out on it. And not only are you going to have a day or a week or a month or 2 months to kind of double check that date, but you'll have all the way until 2 weeks prior, like November 7th, basically, to call me back and change dates or cancel. So a lot of our holiday people are booking up months in advance, and it makes sense if you're really serious about it to at least get on the calendar. So were there other concerns that you haven't quite shared with me, or is it just really about the time frame, in which case we could try to go ahead and get you on the calendar, again, understanding you're not taking any risk whatsoever?
Well, I mean, to be honest, John, the doctor's great. Yeah, I'm okay with the pricing, and I think I think the Thanksgiving time would work better. But I actually do have a couple more appointments that I'm going to be meeting with other doctors, just so I can make sure that I feel comfortable with my decision.
Oh, well, that's absolutely great. And in fact, by the way, just so you know, I mean, I don't tell people to go see other doctors, but to be honest, I do the same. I mean, I totally agree with you, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. I never feel bad about being honest, and I think it's actually great that you're doing your due diligence and making sure you've really made the best selection for yourself. Now, one of the things I was mentioning, and it kind of goes back, I don't mean to kind of sound like a broken record about our process, but what's so great about our process here is that you're not taking any risk in selecting the date. In fact, I would say 30–40% of our patients will meet with us and at least one other doctor. And of course, we think we're the best, and most people do pick us. And I've got to tell you, almost nobody ever cancels because our doctor's so wonderful, and of course, I'm so wonderful. I know you love me. Of course, I'm kidding. But what I would say is you're still able to reserve that date, and heck, you can go see 25 other doctors between now and November if it makes you happy. And I think that'll make you crazy, but whatever makes you happy makes me happy. And if for any reason you fall in love with another doctor, you can still break up with us and we'll still give you a high five or a hug. There's no real worries. But I'd still like to at least reserve the date. Now, if you have any other concerns or apprehensions, by all means, I'm your patient concierge. I'm really here to help you. And in fact, my job isn't to convince you to say yes. My job is really to help you to make the best decision for you, even if that decision is no. We always hope it's yes. We always love it when people select us, but I'm really here to help you out. And luckily, our doctor, he's going to have enough people pick him, and he really believes in practicing the best medicine. But if it really is just about finishing a couple other appointments, we'll go ahead and get you reserved. And again, it's sort of like booking, the New Year's Eve nightclub in Vegas. You got to book in advance. It's not that you have to go. It's not that you can't just stay in and order some room service. It just means you got to plan in advance if you want to have the opportunity to go to that place. And it's the same way with our practice. So, what are your thoughts based on that? And so let's kind of stop that. Let's go ahead and stop that one there. So we did actually 3 or 4 rounds of objection cycle there because it went from the cloud of my time frames changed to then the real truth of the matter, which is that they've got 2 or 3 other doctor's appointments. And each time I just made them feel heard, tried to use whatever ammo I had to kind of get past it. So let me do let's do another round for you, Dean. Are you ready to go?
Yep, perfect.
Great. Well, this has really been great, but Dean, what I'm going to do is I just want to do a little bit more research and just make absolutely sure that this is the procedure that I even want.
Oh, absolutely. Heck, I mean, if I were you, John, I'd be doing all the research I can. Now, what you'll realize by selecting your date is that you have plenty of time to still do your research since your date is completely changeable or even able to be canceled all the way up until 2 weeks before without any penalty at all. So basically, by reserving your date today, guarantees the date that you want, but still having plenty of time to continue your research. And honestly, after you do all your research, one of 2 things is realistically going to happen. You're either going to cancel and get your deposit back, which we hope you won't, but of course, we would certainly love to earn your business. Or we're going to be glad that you selected your date today, not have to scramble and try to find another date that works in your schedule and the doctor's schedule. So, would you like to at least select a date now and just get back to me later if it won't work out?
Yeah, well, absolutely. But I got to tell you, Dean, I was actually thinking about. I mean, I've got like half of it saved, but I really don't think I want to proceed unless I can get like financing or whatever. Do you guys offer financing?
Oh yeah, certainly. So it sounds like it was a little bit more than what you were expecting, and it sounds like you need some financing just to kind of supplement.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, I don't have all of it. Just a little bit more than I thought it would be. It's too much money.
No problem, understood. Well, yeah, I mean, like as I mentioned over the phone, we're obviously not going to be the cheapest around. I know you're not necessarily looking for a cheap doctor, but I do understand that sometimes the price could be a little more than expected, and that does sometimes happen. I know we spoke about a general range, so just out of curiosity, how far off are we?
Yeah, well, I think you had kind of mentioned like, $5 to $10 grand, and they're usually like, $7 grand for this particular treatment. And I don't know, I guess you kind of told me, but I was just thinking, gosh, I don't know, I thought it'd be like maybe 5,500 or something, and now it's like 7,500. So it's just a little more than I could even afford, I think.
Okay, sure, yeah. So it sounds like we're about $2,000 off, which I know sometimes happens, and you weren't expecting quite that much. What most of our patients do in this situation, Don, is supplement what you already have in your budget, which it sounds like is $5,500, with an interest-free payment plan over the course of 6 months. Or if you don't mind a little bit of interest and want lower payments, you could actually finance it over longer than that. Would that work a little bit better for you?
Yeah, well, actually, what you said, 6 months, no interest?
6 months, absolutely no interest.
Oh, that's kind of good. But I got to tell you, I don't know about you, but I was just sort of always raised to not really believe in payment plans, kind of like Santa Claus. So, I've just never really been the kind of person who likes to have a lot of payments.
John, I
So,
totally
yeah.
understand. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm the same way, and if money grew on trees for me, I'd never use a payment plan ever again. But however, we're only looking to finance just a portion, and by the time you are all saved up, if you did want to wait, realistically, prices do change over time, and so this price will increase by the time you are saved up. So having said that, most patients love the fact that we can do no interest, and even if you wanted to do the longer terms with the interest would be probably less than a cell phone bill. So do you see why financing just a small part of the procedure makes sense in this situation?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. I mean, if it's no interest, I mean, it'd be silly for me not to do it. So I'm kind of with you. But to be honest, I don't even know if my credit is all that good. I mean, like I had a house that was underwater after the economy, and I always pay my bills, but it says it's going to be 2 or 3 years before I'm really back in that kind of high credit score situation.
Gosh, yeah, no worries. I totally understand. Yeah, I mean, some people's credit just simply won't qualify for the financing if they apply on their own. And John, you seem like a trustworthy person. I mean, since my job is to help make this a reality for you, I'm just curious. Do you know anybody? Who do you know that has pretty good credit that might trust you enough to co-sign for you?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess my wife has better credit than me, or like my mom. I don't honestly know whether or not they'd say yes. I guess I could discuss it with them.
Okay. Well, how long do you think it would take you to talk to them and discuss it and see if that might be an option for you?
Oh, I don't know, maybe, I mean, I guess if I were going to do that, I mean, I guess I might get approved myself, but if I don't, then I don't know, maybe like definitely before the end of the week.
Okay, sounds good. Well, would it be reasonable to touch base again in about a week or so and revisit things? And assuming they say yes, then we can go ahead and start the process for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So good. So let's stop there. So great job, and thank you, Dean. So what you hopefully saw there was a few of the financial ones, which, we went down the finance route, we went to payment plans, we went to cosigner, but the most important thing you should be seeing out in webinar land or hearing out in webinar land is the objection cycle, where we're using logic and reason to try to solve their problems in a reasonable and honest and ethical fashion, but making sure they feel heard, they feel good, and we're doing it in a low-key manner. Now, again, do payment plans always work for someone who doesn't have the money? No, not necessarily. Not everybody finds a cosigner. Not everybody gets approved. But these are examples of solutions to some of these. Now, the last one we had is the question about discounting, and can I have a lower quote? And certainly it's YellowTelescope's belief based on proof and research that discounts as a general rule don't work and they're a bad idea. That doesn't mean that we never discount. For example, some discounts are just the right thing to do. For example, a lot of our offices, all firefighters, for example, get a small discount, or all students get a discount, a repeat patient gets a discount. I do think it should be consistent, a flat 5% or flat 10% across the board, not be up and down and depending on the person and special for some and not special for others. But besides those sort of standard discounts, one of the things that we believe in is if we're going to offer any discount at all, it must be in return for something. And that way I don't look at it as a discount. I think of it as two people doing one another a favor. So, for example, we believe that one way to get a discount, even though we did have a cancellation from someone who got a terrible flu around Christmas time. Well, if someone is able to fill that spot in on only 4 days' notice, well, maybe that's not really a discount. To me, that's a favor being done. It's thank you very much for helping my practice and filling in that slot. In return, we'd like to offer you a thank you of a small discount, whether it's a couple $100 or whether it's $1,000 or whatever it is, depending on the price of that particular treatment or procedure. The key thing, though, is the objection cycle still works on this. So, Dean, you want to shoot it at me? So, Dean, this procedure is going to be $10,000, and we kind of given you a broad range over the phone, and so sure enough, it's kind of right in the middle of what we were thinking. So I'm assuming that you still want to go ahead and select that date in June, Dean? Have we lost Dean? Have we lost me?
You're still on there. We just
okay. Well, I'll do this one without Dean in case he got bumped off. Did we just get you back, Dean? Okay, I think we lost Dean for a minute. So let me give you an example of how to handle the discount question. And there's a few different ways, and all will use the objection cycle. So they say to me, John, can I, that's a fair price. You kind of tell me, but we really hope to be a little lower. Are you able to do a little something for me? My answer would be like, well, first of all, I totally appreciate you asking. To be honest, I'd ask the same thing. Why not? There's no harm in asking. What I will tell you is that certainly in our practice, there really aren't any discounts per se. There's no such thing as half off or whatever. I wish there were. I'd have just about everybody pick us. So, but I do hear where you're coming from. I appreciate you requesting it. Really, the only possible way that I'm ever able to even offer some sort of lower price, and it's usually not much. It's a sort of a gesture more than it is a huge discount. Is really if someone's able to fill in, for example, a really short notice date. So right now I really only have one. It happens to be next Wednesday. I don't even know that I can give you a discount, but it would be like you being available for that date on short notice. And those don't come up very often, so it's certainly not worth waiting around to find another. But that's really all I could even potentially offer. So out of curiosity, would something as close as next Wednesday even possibly work for you if, in fact, I'm able to find any deal for you? And notice we're not offering the discount, we're not guaranteeing it, we're not giving a number, but we're feeling out the situation. Because the reality is if they say, oh, there's no way on earth, I'd get fired from my job and my wife would divorce me and there's no way on earth, there's really no point cheapening the brand by giving a number or discounting at all. Now, if they say, oh, I am totally flexible, I am retired, every single dollar counts. Heck, if I could save $200, well, that pays for a couple of new pair of Nike Airs for my jogs in the morning. You tell me what you can do. Well, then I'm able to say, great, well, let me do a little number crunching, or let me speak with the doctor, let me figure out what I can do, and I'll see what I can do. And basically, it's booked at that point. So I really hold that back. Now, another way of handling the discount situation, the discount issue, is simply by doing what we had talked about early in the call, which is covering these things by phone. We do believe in giving at least a broad ballpark price range, not so much to weed out people without the money, but to weed people in. So, for example, if your typical, facelift is between, is around $11,000, I'm going to probably do a ballpark range of about 9 to 13 because you never know if they're going to assume that the blepharoplasty is included. You never know if they're only going to need a neck lift and it'll be lower. And it kind of weeds in people who expect it to be a little higher and weeds in people who expect it to be a little lower. If you're doing LASIK surgery, and your typical price is $5,000 or $8,000 or $3,000, I'm going to ballpark a little around that to weed people in. And then they don't usually have the question about what the price will be. They don't usually have the objection about, wow, it's way more than I thought. And then they usually don't ask for a discount. And when they do, you have ammo. You're able to say, well, politely, we kind of told you what it'd be over the phone. And sure enough, it is what we said it'd be over the phone. So you can't really say you're surprised by the price or that you need a discount, or you probably never would have been here. And that kind of overcomes that objection before it comes up. Now, moving forward, a few summary thoughts. Objections are really the answerable, solvable reasons why not. If we can answer those reasons using the objection cycle, then we can overcome it using that logic and get the sale. We're going to open it up to a few questions here. Possibly Glenn can jump on with a couple of the extras he would like to get answered. I have a few I picked out that you had submitted before. And we can go from there. But a couple of quick things before we get to that. First of all, if you haven't already, please download our brand new free podcast starring myself and Ed Syring, our YellowTelescope partner. It's a very lengthy address there, but you can slowly write it down. You can also do your phone or do functions. Also, complimentary YellowTelescope.com. There's kinds of episodes of our newsletter. spam you. We just send out about one email every 6 weeks, chock full of great information. We do have our flagship event, the annual Yellow Telescope Training Seminar, which is in Miami. It's always in a 5-star hotel, and everything's included. You get breakfast, lunch, dinner, cocktail hour, 2 nights in an oceanfront balcony suite for 2 nights paid for as a part of your cost. And we are offering $1,000 off if you sign up prior to June 20th and mention this webinar. So you can also just email us at info@yellowtelescope.com, not YellowTelescope. There's a typo there. And my email, if you have specific questions, is john@yellowtelescope.com. So there's lots of great stuff on the website. We can also set up complimentary calls with you and or your doctor to talk a little bit about how we actually help practices grow and how we actually make money as a company while helping every practice we've ever worked with in the history of our company grow in a single year by between $100,000 and $1.25 million with 0 exceptions. With that, I wanted to see what other quick questions there were out there. Glenn, did you want to give me one or two? I don't know if we're running out of time, or if we want to take 5 or 10 extra minutes. You tell me, sir.
Yeah, we're at the very end here of our time. There is a couple of questions, and one specifically that I wanted to ask, which had to do with when these conversations were taking place. Is this before they come in on the phone, or were these conversations being taken place actually in
That's a great question. So the question is, do we do this over the phone? Do we do these live in consult? In the perfect world, as you get more and more advanced, we actually love to push as much of this to the phone call as possible. So when you heard Dean definitely is closing many of his sales, all but booking them by phone before they even walk in the door. So every objection we handle there can be done over the phone if we're building a solid amount of rapport and we have your most sophisticated communicator in your practice taking that phone call, not just the very junior 18-year-old receptionist. With that said, we are still going to get those same objections sometimes live, and depending on the particular industry, it may or may not be appropriate or reasonable to cover some of that over the phone, and so everything we just spoke about can be covered live in the consultation as well, and we strongly recommend the patient advisor or manager or nurse or whoever is meeting with each patient where possible before the doctor goes in so that they can handle a lot of these things up front.
Well, that's excellent, John. And there's a few more questions, but we are out of time here, and I will be passing these on to you so that way you can reach out to everybody and be able to answer them individually.
Yeah, and one thought, by the way, Glenn, I know that you've got a couple of quick things to go through here. I'm available if anybody wants. I can, stay on for another 10 minutes when you're finished. If anybody wishes to remain on the call, no pressure to do so, but I've got just a few extra minutes if needed.
Great. Well, and I also wanted to note, John, that you wrote a great piece on our Practice Talk blog, the paradigm shift, embracing sales is the key to the future of practice growth. And I highly recommend everyone to read that at practicetalk.com. And I also wanted to note that we are going to have this webinar available on demand. So if you missed parts of it or you want to hear Jon and Ed's great advice again, we'll have that available here very soon, and each of you will be emailed about that. And then finally, as you know, Practice Talk has multiple marketing services, and we have an offer that we're going to give for everybody that signs up between now and June 15th. You'll get 2 free months onto your Located Doc subscriptions. And our number is 877-809-1777. And info@practicedoc.com will get you with someone to help you connect and locate a doctor and the information needs, ask the doctor before and after, and lead tracking. And then there's a survey here at the end that you can try to fill out, which includes a pop-up will give you an opportunity to connect with YellowTelescope and Practice Doc. Again, thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Jon and Dean, for your great advice. And we'll look forward to following up with each of you. And this includes our webinar, so thanks again.
Yeah, Glenn, thank you very much on behalf of Dean and me. Thanks so much, Dean, for helping us out today, and I really appreciate just being given the opportunity to speak with everybody. We've really had a great time with these webinars, and we really think it's a fantastic service that Practice Doc and LocatedDoc.com are providing to all of you, and certainly look them up.
Awesome. Thank you. And then this concludes our webinar.